Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So today is the last readings on modesty. One of the 8 great thoughts. This Dhamma is for one who is modest, not for one who is self-aggrandizing. And I've amassed a variety of short readings with the help of some various community members also on this topic of modesty. And I thought, just as actually a sort of a brief warm-up, I'd also like to mention about this quality apichamasti, that just 2 brief examples from the chanting we regularly do, because we can do it, but sometimes we just go on autopilot and we don't. There's some good gems in there. So this first example maybe you recognize. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. So that, of course, is from the Karaniya Metta Sutta. And then, I am indeed the Buddha's servant. The Buddha is my Lord and guide. So that's from evening chanting. So last reading day, Ajahn Kachana mentioned Majjhima Nikaya 31, Venerable Anuruddha, living with 2 other bhikkhus, living in concord with mutual appreciation, without disputing, blending like milk and water, viewing each other with kindly eyes. And the first reading I'll do is, this is from a novice under that Venerable Anuruddha. And so this is the novice speaking. The novice is named Sumana. When I was 7 and newly gone forth, having conquered with my power the great powerful serpent, I was fetching water for my preceptor from the great lake Anuttata, when the teacher saw me and said, "Look, Sariputta, at that one, the young boy coming there, carrying a pot of water, well centered within, his practices inspiring, his bearing admirable. He's Anuruddha's novice, mature in his powers, made thoroughbred by a thoroughbred, good by one who is good, tamed by Anuruddha, trained by one whose task is done. He, having reached the highest peace and realized the unshakable, Sumana the novice wants this: don't let anyone know me." Okay, now do a short reading, the Thag Sutta, translated by Ajahn Tanisaro, and Ajahn Jeff, his note at the beginning is, on the surface, the qualities the Buddha attributes to Thag in this sutta do not seem especially amazing or astounding. Keep in mind, however, that the canon depicts Thag as very wealthy, and the commentary adds that he is a prince. To find such qualities in a person of power and wealth is fairly amazing. This is Anguttara 8, number 23. On one occasion, the Blessed One was staying near Alavi at the Agalava shrine. There he addressed the monks. "Monks, remember Thag of Alavi as being endowed with 7 amazing, astounding qualities, Which 7? Monks, Thag of Alavi is endowed with conviction. He is virtuous. He has a sense of conscience. He has a sense of concern, which is the translation for Ottappa. He is learned. He is generous. He is discerning. Remember Thag of Alavi as being endowed with these 7 amazing, astounding qualities. This is what the Blessed One said. Having said it, the one well gone, getting up from his seat, went into his dwelling. Then early in the morning, a certain monk, having put on his robes and carrying his bowl and outer robe, went to Thag of Alavi's home. On arrival, he sat down on a seat made ready. Then Thag of Alavi approached the monk, and having bowed down to him, sat to one side. As he was sitting there, the monk said to him, "Friend, the Blessed One has described you as being endowed with 7 amazing, astounding qualities. Which 7? Thag of Alavi is endowed with conviction. He is virtuous. He has a sense of conscience. He has a sense of concern. He is learned. He is generous. He is discerning." Friend, the Blessed One has described you as being endowed with these 7 amazing, astounding qualities. I hope, sir, that there were no white-clad householders there. No, friend, there were no white-clad householders there. It's good, sir, that there were no white-clad householders there. Then the monk, having received alms at Thag of Alavi's home, departed. After his meal, returning from his alms round, he went to the Blessed One. On arrival, having bowed down to the Blessed One, he sat to one side, and as he was sitting there, he told the Blessed One what had happened. The Blessed One replied, "It's good, monk. It's very good that the clansman is modest and does not want others to know of the skillful qualities present in him. In that case, monk, remember Thag of Alavi as being endowed with this 8th amazing, astounding quality, modesty." Now I'll do another reading from the Anguttara Nikaya about speech, specifically with regards to speech. Anguttara Nikaya 4's number 73. A person endowed with these 4 qualities can be known as a person of integrity. Which 4? There is the case where a person of integrity, when asked, does not reveal another person's bad points, to say nothing of when unasked. Furthermore, when asked, when pressed with questions, he is one who speaks of another person's bad points, not in full, not in detail, with omissions, holding back. Then again, a person of integrity, when unasked, reveals another person's good points, to say nothing of when asked. Furthermore, when asked, when pressed with questions, he is one who speaks of another person's good points in full and in detail, without omissions, without holding back. Then again, a person of integrity, when unasked, reveals his own bad points, to say nothing of when asked. Furthermore, when asked, when pressed with questions, he is one who speaks of his own bad points in full and in detail, without omissions, without holding back. Then again, a person of integrity, when asked, does not reveal his own good points, to say nothing of when unasked. Furthermore, when asked, when pressed with questions, he is one who speaks of his own good points, not in full, not in detail, with omissions, holding back. Monks, a person endowed with these 4 qualities can be known as a person of integrity. And this is a reading from the Dhammapada on topic of gain, honor, and praise, sort of as was read last reading day, and quite strong language again, but perhaps to counteract the general assumption, whether it be in ancient India or modern Thailand or modern America, that fame, wealth, status are good. Dhammapada verse 72 to 74. Only for his ruin does renown come to the fool. It ravages his bright fortune and rips his head apart. This is Ajahn Thanissaro's translation. He would want unwarranted status, preeminence among monks, authority among monasteries, homage from lay families. Let householders and those gone forth both think that this was done by me alone. Oh, okay, this is a quote. Quote, let householders and those gone forth both think that this was done by me alone. May I alone determine what's a duty, what's not. End quote. The resolve of a fool as they grow his desire and pride. Verse 75. The path to material gain goes one way, the way to unbinding another. Realizing this, the monk, a disciple to the awakened one, should not relish offerings, should cultivate seclusion instead. Now, just read 2 more verses from the Dhammapada. I thought they're connected in that oftentimes the feeling of self-importance can go along with feeling offended. So this is Dhammapada, or ill will. This is Dhammapada, verse 3 and 4. He insulted me, hit me, beat me, robbed me. For those who brood on this, hostility is not stilled. He insulted me, hit me, beat me, robbed me. For those who do not brood on this, hostility is stilled. And so, finally, I'm just going to do some readings about this, one of the sort of notorious or famous historical examples of a bhikkhu who is not modest, which is the Venerable Channa. And he, so I'll start with a reading from the Buddhist Monastic Code under the rule Sangha Disesa 12 about bhikkhu being difficult to admonish. The commentary defines difficult to admonish as impossible to speak to, and adds that a bhikkhu difficult to admonish is one who cannot stand being criticized or does not mend his ways after his faults are pointed out to him. It quotes from the Anumana Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 15, a list of traits, any of one which makes a bhikkhu difficult to admonish. He has evil desires, exalts himself and degrades others, is easily angered. Because of this he harbors ill will, holds a grudge, utters angry words. Accused, he throws a tantrum. Accused, he is insulting. Accused, he returns the accusation. He evades back and forth. He does not respond. He is mean and spiteful, jealous and possessive, scheming and deceitful, stubborn and proud, attached to his own views, obstinate, unable to let them go. A fair number of these traits are exemplified by Venerable Channa, according to tradition, the Buddha's horseman on the night of the great going forth, in the origin stories to Pachidiya 12, 54, and 71, and especially in the origin story to this rule. Quote, you think you are to admonish me? It is I who should admonish you. The Buddha is mine, the Dhamma is mine. It was by my young master that the Dhamma was realized. Just as a great wind, when blowing, would gather up grass, sticks, leaves, and rubbish, or a mountain-born river would gather up water, weeds, and scum, so you in going forth have been gathered up from various names, various clans, various ancestries, various families. You think you are to admonish me? It is I who should admonish you. So, the opposite of modest. And in the Digha Nikaya, in the Parinibbana Sutta, talks about the end of the Buddha's life. And just before the Buddha died, the Buddha made several pronouncements on various matters. So this is basically on his deathbed. And one of those was, I'll just read it out. It's concerning this monk here. After my passing, this is the Buddha talking to the monks assembled when the Buddha's on his deathbed. After my passing, the monk Channa is to receive the Brahma penalty. But Lord, what is the Brahma penalty? Whatever the monk Channa wants or says, he is not to be spoken to, admonished, or instructed by the monks. So this is Bhikkhu Bodhi's note. Channa had been Gautama's charioteer and had since joined the order, but showed a perverse spirit. The treatment imposed on him by the Buddha's orders brought him to his senses. So continue with the Venerable Channa. So presumably after hearing about this penalty that the Buddha laid down on his deathbed, he came to his senses and mended his ways. And then, so this is a reading from the Channa, from Venerable Channa in the Samyutta Nikaya, from the Khanda Samyutta. On one occasion, a number of bhikkhus were dwelling at Varanasi in the deer park at Isipatana. Then in the evening, the Venerable Channa emerged from seclusion and taking his key, went from dwelling to dwelling, saying to the elder bhikkhus, "Let the elder venerable ones exhort me, let them instruct me, let them give me a Dhamma talk in such a way that I might see the Dhamma." When this was said, the elder bhikkhu said to the Venerable Channa, "Form, friend Channa, is impermanent. Feeling is impermanent. Perception is impermanent. Volitional formations are impermanent. Consciousness is impermanent. Form is non-self. Feeling is non-self. Perception is non-self. Volitional formations are non-self. Consciousness is non-self. All formations are impermanent. All formations are non-self." And there's an interesting note there that he only mentions 2 of the 3 characteristics. They don't mention dukkha. And then why? And it's according to the commentary, because they thought, this bhikkhu is argumentative. If we mention suffering, he will quarrel with us, saying, if form, etc. are suffering, the path and fruit too are suffering. So you monks have attained nothing but suffering. Thus they answered in a way that could not be faulted. Then it occurred to the Venerable Channa, I too think in this way. Form is impermanent, and so forth. Consciousness is impermanent. Form is non-self. Consciousness is non-self. All formations are impermanent. All phenomena are non-self. But my mind does not launch out upon the stilling of all formations, the relinquishing of all acquisitions, the destruction of craving, dispassion, cessation, nibbana. Nor does it acquire confidence, settle down, and resolve on it. Instead, agitation and clinging arise, and the mind turns back thinking, but who is myself? But such does not happen to one who sees the Dhamma. So who can teach me the Dhamma in such a way that I might see the Dhamma? Then it occurred to the Venerable Channa, this Venerable Ananda is dwelling at Kosambi in Gosita's park, and he has been praised by the teacher and is esteemed by his wise brothers in the holy life. The Venerable Ananda is capable of teaching me the Dhamma in such a way that I might see the Dhamma. Since I have so much trust in the Venerable Ananda, let me approach him. Then the Venerable Channa set his lodging in order, took his bone robe, and went to Gosita's park in Kosambi, where he approached the Venerable Ananda and exchanged greetings with him. When they had concluded their greetings and cordial talk, he sat down to one side and told the Venerable Ananda everything that had happened, adding, let the Venerable Ananda exhort me, let him instruct me, let him give me a Dhamma talk in such a way that I might see the Dhamma. Even by this much am I pleased with the Venerable Channa. Perhaps the Venerable Channa has opened himself up and broken through his barrenness. Lend your ear, friend Channa. You are capable of understanding the Dhamma. Then at once a lofty rapture and gladness arose in the Venerable Channa as he thought, it seems that I am capable of understanding the Dhamma. And then Venerable Nanda gives him a discourse, but I won't stop here.
There's a couple points from that I find very interesting. The Channa story, like the Brahma punishment, the greatest punishment is to not admonish him anymore, which is very interesting. And then the other thing is that it's kind of heartening in a way that somebody so difficult could still realize the Dhamma later on. Mm-hmm. So it's like, for any of us who think like, oh, I'm so hopeless, I might as well want to give up, we can remember Venerable Channa. And he was probably more difficult than any of us could be.
Yeah, and that of all the obstructions, greed, hatred, and delusion, but when they say that anger or aversion can be one of the most destructive ones, but it's also one of it's the easiest one to overcome, easiest in quotes, just because the power of it is so disturbing, so that if one actually sees how disturbing that quality of mind is, then the impetus is very strong to give it up, whereas sometimes the other ones are a bit more subtle, alluring, and confusing if it's delusion. So I find that heartening when I get irritated.
I also find that very last passage really interesting too, because maybe it doesn't follow exactly, but to me that kind of implies something that I've seen, whereas like immodesty or self-aggrandizement, seeking of gain, honor, praise, and even things like being stubborn or things like that are like born out of like a lack of self-respect. They're born out of like, a lack of self-confidence, and so that sense of like, the first thing that Ananda does is give him some gamangjai, give him some sort of encouragement, and basically, quote, puff him up a little bit, but in a way that empowers him to then be able to receive the Dhamma. Yeah. So that kind of...
Somebody doesn't think what I'm a hopeless case.
Finally, yeah. I also find that heartening.
The other thing about that story, and I don't know how many 100 miles it is, but that was not a short walk that Venerable Channa did. Mm-hmm. He conceived some faith in Ananda and really put forth some effort on the basis of that.
And I think he was like 80. And this was after the Buddha's Parinibbana.
Yeah.
Just a question for Ajahn and Thitapanno. The first story you read was a novice, it was a disciple of Sumana.
Yeah.
Where, I don't know if you said it, but I was just curious where that story is.
Oh, it's from the Theragatha.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I never heard of that before. That was quite interesting.
Yeah, the verses, the elder bhikkhus, or the verses, yeah.
Was he, can you tell us a little bit about him? It's not clear from the verses.
Actually, that's all I know. The only thing
does that imply he's an arhat?
I think so, and also I don't have the footnote here, but I think that lake that he's fetching water from is actually like a lake up high in the Himalayas. So actually, by inference, he's using his psychic powers to like fly to the Himalayas because this lake apparently has the best water, but he's trying to do it like secretly.
Anuttata, I think.
Yeah, Anuttata.
I'm not even sure if it's an actual one that we would recognize as currently existent in the Himalayas, but certainly within the Buddhist cosmology of the whole, Mount Sineru and in the Himalayas and surrounded by this. It's a very, if I remember right from Ajahn Punadamo's book, the Buddhist cosmology. It's like a kind of a holy place. And so, yeah, he must have used his psychic powers to get there, get the water and bring it back.
One observation about that. Listening to the sutta about from the Anguttara 4 is about not revealing one's good points and not revealing the shortcomings of others. I was thinking, yeah, Luang Por Pasanno does that pretty well. You can, on both, you hear you'll just hear things that he's done, and then still new things that he's done, and he, spent so much time with him, but he just doesn't talk about all the good that he's done. And then even if you know that somebody's really problematic, and another person asks Luang Por Pasanno about that person, you don't hear anywhere. He's very measured. He says what needs to be said, but never goes into any unnecessary detail about the problems of others. I thought that reminded me of his behavior.
And when you press him and question him about his good deeds, he'll sort of really downplay them, and he'll be very curt and very short about it, and then sort of move on.
That's one problem with the autobiography of Master Shu Yun. It's like you don't get much of his life because of that quality in him. You have to read the biography done by Master Hua to really learn about the extent of his good deeds in his life.
Just one other thing from earlier in the readings that you did just caught my ear, because it's oftentimes when talking, say, with some lay people who have had difficulties coming to get some, guidance or whatever. It was the thing about when someone reviles you and disparages you, how you kind of just you don't react in terms of, I can't remember exactly the way it was phrased, but essentially just like not contributing, not getting super involved was oftentimes the notion comes up, well, does that mean I should just be a doormat? Should I just let people abuse me and not take any stand and receive it and not ever do anything about that, and just how that sometimes can be taken as like internalizing and not acting and not taking care of one's own needs, and often have to kind of say, hold it, you have to know what's clearly appropriate and what isn't, and take appropriate steps to create boundaries, not through anger or revenge or indignation, but through, clearly, mentioning what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, what's not for their own welfare as well as for your own too. Not having to just take on abuse without any kind of wise, compassionate response.
I also think, in listening to the teachings from suttas, any teachings at all, it's just worth bearing in mind, like, one's particular culture, one's particular background, one's own, where one's at, oneself. Like, for example, one, whether asked or not, will volunteer one's own bad qualities. I could see someone taking that practice on and it going sort of odd. But then just to balance it out with the reflection on recollecting one's own good qualities. You might not go around telling everybody all the time about all your good qualities, but I think especially as Westerners with the Judeo-Christian grounding, a lot of self-judgment and original sin grounding. Sort of similar to what Suhaja was saying about like Ananda's giving Channa like a boost in a healthy way, as opposed to like, you're whatever, in an unhealthy way. I just feel like that grain of salt and that sort of like because my sense, certainly like with a lot of the Kuba Ajahns teachings to the Thais, and a lot of the stuff in the suttas, there's more, it's like on a whole, it's more of like a teaching towards greed types. Not like completely, there's obviously teachings for anger types as well, but it's almost like not taking the medication without reading the label, you know what I mean? Just bearing that in mind.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah, I think to echo that a little bit, like in terms of it going a bit odd, in terms of like being openly really critical of yourself all the time. And back to that original Anuruddha Sutta, that's actually not modesty. It's like, may others know me as modest is not modesty. It's like, or I guess in English parlance, we might call that false modesty, where we're like going around criticizing ourselves all the time with the hope, may other people see me as modest or a person of integrity based on this.
And it's a very interesting subject, I think, how one relates to oneself within the practice, both as a lay practitioner and as a monastic. I mean, I know for myself, I really took the not self-teaching on really hardcore in the very beginning, and then after a while I was like, wait, I think I need to, you know, it's obviously a complicated and deep subject, this idea of fashioning, I mean, there's the Sumana Sangha, so obviously there's some encouragement to conceive of some sense of, a skillful sense of self, oneself as a samana, and I guess really short of it, simply finding skillful ways of relating to oneself, you know. I mean, I, for myself, definitely tried to just knock it all out straight off the bat, and didn't find that it totally worked. I mean, I'd recommend, you know, if you can do it, more power to you. But yeah, I found for myself over time, still working on it, obviously, these skillful ways of relating to oneself, thinking about oneself to be quite crucial, actually. Because they inform, obviously, the way that one relates to everybody else.
Yeah, Ajahn Jeff refers to that, you know, it's sort of like letting go of the unskillful ways of becoming, but developing the skillful ways of becoming,
Yeah, exactly.
in order to then sometime further down the line let go of even those skillful ways of becoming. But you can't skip that part.
I remember a recording of Ajahn Parinibbana where I think he may have been quoting his teacher Ajahn Mahabua, but he said that like for sila, if you look at the path linearly, like with sila and samadhi, you don't use anatta. It's like you use a sense of self for those two, and then once you've cultivated those two sufficiently, then you use anatta with the panya practice, with the wisdom practices, and then when you finish with that, you throw both anatta and atta out the door.
So, you know, I think that Ajahn Chah also encourages, and it's useful in my mind as well, to start really familiarizing yourself with the quality of these things not being self, even as you're developing them with a sense of self, you know, reflecting, at least from a conceptual level, that it's all not self, or it's not all self. Just to start to get the flavor of it and realize that you're still conjuring up and creating and fabricating certain qualities and states of mind with some sort of identification, but that also just keeping in mind that perspective of, you know, these are skillful qualities that are being developed, not this is me becoming, you know, this kind of person in such a solid way. So keeping the reflection there of not self right from the beginning, but realizing that you're probably still picking that up with some sense of identity.
It also helps that all those sort of bastions of self, which are like so potent in most of life, I feel are in the monastic order, they're so obviously artificially constructed, like seniority, you know, I mean, it's so obviously a convention, and having to kind of step into the role of senior and then junior, depending on who you're talking to, you know, dozens of times every day. It gives you a chance to really, you know, and you see very clearly, like, you know, this is that. And also looking at all these examples of modest people, you know, it strikes me like the issue we were talking about in terms of how to translate apicchata. One of few wishes, like, they are very related. Just thinking about, you know, Luang Por Pasanno and just how little he asks for. I heard a story of, like, you know, him on a retreat once, and like the lady giving him food just thought Westerners couldn't eat like anything but eggs, so she just, I think you told me this, Ajahn, so she just fed him eggs until and I think he went blind. But he didn't say anything. It's obviously way over the top for a lot of us in certain ways, but just it also seems like a nice roundabout way to cultivate modesty somewhat healthily, is like really trying to ask for little. You know, because it's non-conceptual, but I think they're very related to each other, and yeah, it's just a lot. And just thinking about Ajahn Sek, so many instances just being like, you know, if anyone has something to admonish me about, just let me know. Like, so, you know, just something like that.
Also the various roles in the monastery, you know, kitchen manager, stores monk, work monk, like how often we rotate through people, sort of, you know, the sort of the throughput of people through the turnover through, you know, these different roles, and sometimes it's just for a couple of weeks, sometimes it's for a few months, but I guess Abbott's the one that doesn't rotate very often. But for most of us, you know, it's like
My pile done.
And it's like, you know, you sort of, you come into your role as whatever it is, and you sort of make all these changes and all this stuff, and then a couple months later, the new guy comes in and sort of takes everything apart, rejiggers everything, but it's a really great sort of feel for that, the similitude with the hierarchy or whatever.
Yeah, it's true. It's a good point. It's like the Tibetan practice of painstakingly building the mandala, and then, you know, after it's all completely done, destroying it all.